It was nearing midnight when Luke Carter, a 36-year-old single dad, left the late shift at the 24-hour diner in the quiet town of Maple Ridge. With his apron tucked under his arm and tired eyes scanning the near-empty street, all he could think about was getting home to his sleeping 6-year-old daughter, Maddie. But then he saw her, a woman clearly intoxicated, stumbling in heels too high for comfort, trying to unlock a car that wasn't hers. "Hey, miss, you okay?" he asked gently, not wanting to frighten her. She turned, makeup smudged, tears brimming. "I'm fine. Just can't find my keys. This is my car, I think. Maybe." Luke glanced at the sleek black sedan. The alarm sticker said otherwise. "How about I help you call someone, or maybe I can drop you off?" The woman slurred, "You're kind, too kind. Men aren't kind anymore." Against his better judgment, but led by his heart, he offered her a ride. He opened his beat-up Corolla's passenger side door and waited until she buckled herself in. "My name's Luke," he said softly. "Riley," she murmured before promptly falling asleep. He drove her to the address she mumbled, helped her into the lobby of the luxury building, and made sure the doorman got her safely upstairs. Luke never expected to hear from her again. 3 days later, a black town car pulled up to the diner. Out stepped Riley, clean, composed, and holding a leather folder. "Luke Carter?" she asked, standing in front of the booth where he was serving 2 elderly regulars. He froze. "Yeah, I was drunk, lost, vulnerable, and you helped me with no expectations." She sat down, eyes locked on his. "I wasn't just drunk that night. I was overwhelmed. My father passed 6 months ago. I inherited his company. I was failing, and alone." Luke blinked, unsure where this was going. "I did some digging." She smiled, not in a creepy way. "You're a single dad. You take extra shifts. You've been passed over for promotion 4 times, and yet you stopped for me." He nodded, guarded. She slid the folder across the table. "I run a community outreach and business mentorship program now. We invest in people who show character. I want to offer you a management training scholarship, a job with benefits, and an apartment closer to your daughter's school." Luke opened the folder, speechless. "I don't want charity," he said finally, his voice low. "This isn't charity. It's a thank you for being the kind of man the world needs more of." Weeks later, Luke and Maddie stood at the window of their new 2-bedroom apartment. She was laughing, hugging her teddy bear. Luke was dressed in a suit for his first day at the company Riley had helped him join. He looked out at the city, heart full. One small act of kindness, helping a stranger into what turned out to be the wrong car, had steered his entire life in a new direction. It wasn't luck. It was humanity. And in a world growing colder, one kind act had warmed 2 broken hearts and built a better life. Luke stared out the window as the city lights blinked in the distance, his tie slightly crooked and palms damp with nervous energy. Maddie tugged at his sleeve, her little fingers wrapped around the edge of his blazer. "Daddy, are you going to be the boss now?" He laughed softly, kneeling down to her eye level. "Not yet, kiddo, but maybe one day." She smiled and hugged him tightly, and for a moment everything else faded: the years of struggling, the long nights with empty wallets, the quiet dinners of cereal and toast. The new apartment still smelled of fresh paint and possibility. For the first time in years, there was a separate room for Maddie, filled with second-hand toys that felt like treasure to her, and the kitchen, big enough for actual meals, maybe even pancakes on weekends, not just toast on napkins. At work, Luke started from the bottom, just like always. But this time there was mentorship, purpose, a belief in him he hadn't felt since his wife passed. Riley checked in often, never hovering, always encouraging. Her voice, once slurred and broken in the dark, now carried strength and calm in the daylight. They had coffee once just to talk. She told him how lonely she'd felt, running a company built by her father, living in a penthouse surrounded by silence. He told her about nights holding Maddie's hand through fevers, missing rent, and saying no to birthday parties because he couldn't afford a gift. Their stories were different, but somehow they matched. Both had lost something. Both were trying to rebuild. Weeks turned into months. Luke rose through the ranks, not by miracle, but by merit. His coworkers respected him, not just because Riley vouched for him, but because he showed up every day with honesty, humility, and heart. One evening, as he picked Maddie up from her new after-school art program, she held up a crayon drawing. "It's us," she beamed, "in our house, with the big kitchen, and you're smiling." He looked at the picture, a mess of colors and crooked lines, and felt a lump rise in his throat. There was no mansion, no lottery win, just a decent home, a stable job, and a daughter who believed the world was good again. All because one night he helped a stranger who couldn't stand straight, not for praise, not for reward, just because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes that's all it takes. Not every hero wears a cape. Some just drive a rusty old Corolla, keep their hearts open, and say yes when someone else would walk away. One rainy afternoon, months after their lives had quietly intertwined, Luke walked into the company's downtown office and found Riley waiting in the break room with 2 cups of coffee. She looked different, calmer, more grounded than the woman he first met outside that wrong car. "I wanted to ask you something," she said, handing him the cup. "Do you ever think about that night?" He took a slow sip, watching the rain trace lines on the window. "All the time, not because of what happened after, but because I almost didn't stop. I almost kept walking." She nodded. "And I almost got into the wrong car. Might have ended up somewhere dangerous or worse." Silence settled for a moment, not awkward, just honest. "I think we saved each other that night," she finally said. Luke met her eyes. "Yeah, maybe we did." Their connection was never rushed. No fairy tale romance, no dramatic declarations. Just 2 people learning to trust again, slowly, gently. Riley began joining Luke and Maddie for the occasional Sunday breakfast. Sometimes she brought books, sometimes puzzles. Maddie adored her, and Luke, he started to see something more than gratitude in Riley's eyes. But still, he kept his distance. He knew love wasn't something you fell into. It was something you grew into, carefully, honestly. One evening, as they walked Maddie home from a school concert, Riley reached for Luke's hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. In the quiet of the night, with Maddie skipping ahead in her sparkly sneakers, Luke looked up at the stars blinking through the clouds and smiled. He'd spent years surviving. Now, finally, he was living, not because someone rescued him, but because kindness, unexpected, selfless kindness, had opened a door to trust, to healing, to something that felt a lot like love. Sometimes you don't need to know where the road is going. You just need to be brave enough to take the first step, and kind enough to stop when someone else needs help along the way.